Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear that Kichinarabu-hima volcano just erupted, Paul?
No,
No,
no, I didn't know that. I've been stuck with learning about coronavirus,
Do you know that?
potential treatments.
Do you know that Iceland is about to erupt?
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to cover that on tonight's update. But more importantly, the new coronavirus is truly a modern epidemic. The Atlantic is agreeing to this. Let me see who else I have up here for tonight's show. The WHO officially warns the world may be dangerously unprepared. I mean, can you believe these headlines? Lee and I were just talking tonight, Paul, and we were saying that the fact that they've been screening people, like with thermometers, which is completely independent of the fact that they're actually contagious. And more importantly, tonight, when I was coming home, I was reviewing some work on the fact that the actual coronavirus test that they're using to test people is probably only 50 or 60% effective because they're using nasal and mouth swabs. And if it's only in the lungs that it would not show up there, it's like the information coming out is mind-boggling. How are you dealing
Exactly.
with it?
Well, I mean, it's hard to deal with it. And yeah, I just actually did a video about a study that came out on January 30th from the first patient in California that they're showing the X-rays and how the disease is progressing in the lung, and it is fascinating to see. Just in like 4 or 5 days in the hospital, the buildup of the pneumonia, and then they start to realize, well, you know what, this person really has this severe infection, and they need to treat them with antiviral medication.
Yeah, I just pulled the first paper up here, and that's the one you were showing earlier. You were showing, I believe, the chest X-rays, the post-anterior and lateral chest radiographs from the 22nd.
Yeah.
And then, and this was the patient that was treated with a number of drugs, pneumonia drugs. They were treated initially with 2 pneumonia drugs they didn't react to, and then on days 2 through 5 of hospitalization, the patient's vital signs remain stable. And then all of a sudden, I think here, where is it? Yeah, like on day 7, something happened. And then they gave him the drug. Where is it? Where is the drug's name? And you talked about this
the drug.
You couldn't pronounce it.
Yeah, it's RMD, was it DESIVIR?
Remdesivir, a novel nucleotide analog prodrug in development. Now, I have some of the links up for what that is. Did you look into remdesivir at all?
I didn't dive into it. I published on the video the actual chemical structure, but it was originally designed for Ebola virus, for clinical trials.
Yeah, and Marburg
that's what I thought was.
infections.
Yeah. So.
But according to
And,
Wikipedia, it has also been found to show reasonable antiviral activity against more distantly related viruses such as respiratory syncytial virus, Junin virus, Lassa fever, MERS coronavirus, which is obviously why they're using it.
Right. And what was nice about that paper that you were referencing was that it showed the progression of the disease for this particular patient when they were traveling back from China, and what sort of symptoms they had. They had coughing for almost 15 days. Large amounts of fatigue, diarrhea, vomiting, nausea. and it tracks what days they had it for. So it gives us, a little bit of an insight on what they're seeing at the clinical level.
Okay, so let's. A lot of people have been talking to me, Paul, recently about potentially the novel coronavirus actually being Nipah. Am I saying that right? Nipah virus?
Nipah virus.
Have you heard of
Nipah.
it?
No. Nipah. No.
Okay. Well, we'll have to cover that next time we talk. Yeah, because I only heard of that in passing. And let me get back to the Wikipedia, and I can find it here. Yeah, NIPAH, Engendra virus.
NIPAH.
Yeah, and in fact, they said that the genetic code coming in is very similar to Nipah, which is very contagious, which is a Henipavirus, a genus of RNA viruses in the family Paraeoxavidae, which is a 2009.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, this is interesting because one, it's again another, RNA virus.
Replicates.
On-site 5 to 14 days after exposure. Very similar to what we've been hearing. That's interesting. Symptoms: fever, coughing, headache, confusion.
So
I would have to study it a little bit more. Like what exactly is their attachment protein? And what's the similarities between the S protein and whatever attachment protein is on the Nipah virus. Wow, I don't know. And again, it's fruit bats. It circulates in bats again.
Yeah.
Here again is the host. So there's similarities.
So have you heard? I think I sent you the paper earlier today about Gilead Sciences. A lot of conspiracy theorists, which I think are complete charlatans, because they do not look into the papers. They don't actually read them like we go and read them. And they are not looking at what they're actually saying. A lot of people are saying that Gilead Sciences already has a vaccine for this coronavirus. And so I quickly looked into it, and what they have a vaccine for is the novel coronavirus that was originally spread a long time ago. So as early as 2003. So in your research, what did you find about the earliest expression of this type of bat SARS coronavirus in the papers?
Well, this bat SARS virus, well, this new one is 2019, but it seems to go all the way back to 2010 in the papers, because they were morphing the code, the genomic code, to understand why the host bats were able to harbor the virus for so long. They were monkeying around with the actual genomic code going all the way back to 2010. Now, did they have a vaccine for it?
Of course you froze up as soon as you said vaccine for it.
Yeah, really. Can
you imagine that?
Isn't that so weird? I'll tell you. I mean, wow. And so I don't know.
Okay.
We do know that they're doing these clinical trials. They're doing these clinical trials with antivirals, and I'll tell you what, I would rather have an antiviral medication than have a vaccine.
Yeah, indeed. Now,
because
I sent you a paper earlier today, single cell RNA expression profiling the ACE2, the reputative receptor of Wuhan 2019 novel corona. And this paper came out today, and it suggests that it is an ethnic targeter of Asian men.
Right.
So did you look at the
Right.
paper and
Right.
have you know what I'm talking about?
I didn't fully. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't read the full paper. I did see your link and saw the front part of the paper, but there was a suspicion that it's targeting it was targeting Asians. And then there was some talk, well, there is an ACE2 receptor, and there's more of these for males. And there are receptors for the testes that would be able to have a connection with the virus. So the thought was, well, maybe it's only targeting males. But there's some more research out there that you can upregulate ACE2 more in some ethnicities than others. And if that's true, then you could actually have a virus that is attacking Asian males more than Caucasian males, but Caucasian males are still going to get it. Asian males may have slightly more ACE2 receptors. So like people I don't think really understand, you don't just have a receptor. Your cells kind of upregulate and downregulate receptors, based on concentration levels of ligands. So ligands are basically what attaches to receptors, right? So your body kind of morphs. So a lot of people could say, well, I can get immune to something. They have that they build an immunity. They can drink more alcohol, because they drank alcohol for a long time. It takes more alcohol to be drunk. Well, they have built some sort of an immune response, but that it's not really the immune system. It's really the up and down regulation of these receptors. So cells are learning what is the concentration, the environmental concentrations, and they're up in.
Right when it gets good, they cut you out.
Right when. Well, the point I'm making is that right when the right concentration levels are happening, either inhibiting type ligands or promoting activity type ligands, there is this fluctuation of upregulation or downregulation of receptors. And it's possible that we would have to research it more. Why is it that Asian males are having this upregulation of ACE2? Is it normal in non-infectious individuals as well as infectious individuals, or is there actually an upregulation of ACE2 when infected?
We will see
for
this.
some other reason, because
we're going to see this because it's spreading into the white world now. So we're going to see it in a week or so.
Right. So is it one possibility is that ACE2 is more in Asian males than Caucasian males. But another question needs to be asked: what is the upregulation and downregulation during infection? And it may not necessarily be the whole duration of the infection. It could be maybe just the first 4 days or the last 4 days. The whole longitudinal process of the disease, needs to be understood. Is there upregulation or downregulation of these ACE2 receptors? Because they do many things for us, but they also happen to be the docking station for the virus. Another, the other possibility is that, that it might be certain types of code in the genome, alleles, and it maybe it's one allele or two alleles, so you have two alleles for every gene, one from your mother and one from your father, right? So we don't know if it needs to be homozygous or heterozygous. So, maybe we don't know enough about, or at least I don't know enough about it. And, maybe some of the biochemists that are figuring all this stuff out don't know enough about it. But I think that there's something to up regulation and down regulation of ACE2 and ethnicity. And there definitely is signs between gender. There's for sure. It's targeting because males have more ACE2
All right, so we're
than
speculating
females.
now, like out the woods. We're speculating out the woods. Let's continue to speculate. I told you earlier when we started chatting that in an explosive interview, Dr. Francis Boyle, who drafted the Biological Weapons Act, has given a detailed statement admitting that the 2019 Wuhan coronavirus is an offensive biological warfare weapon, and that the World Health Organization already knows this. I don't know if you read the article that came out today on Zero Hedge, but I reached out to Dr. Francis Boyle over at his academic email, and he got back to me, and we're gonna do an interview on Wednesday, a quick one, 30 minutes. And so I'd like you to look into his work and maybe give me a question or two for him so that we can get that answered. But what are your thoughts? And have you looked at his testimony?
No, I have not seen his testimony that he stated. Oh, no, I haven't. Now, in terms of do I think it's a bioweapon, it's definitely at a bioweapon facility. It was housed at a bioweapon facility. It was most likely designed at the bioweapons facility. It's a P4 pathogen. So, I mean, you have to have the highest level of security. I've been working with the working hypothesis that it was leaked by accident and that it's bioengineered, because other SARS viruses have been known to be leaked out of the P4 facility, that P4 facility before. This is not the first time for a leak. I believe it's the fourth time, but it's been known to have protocol problems. Now the question is, and this is, this may fall in line with the bioweapon perspective. Maybe it wasn't designed as a bioweapon, but it's used as a bioweapon. And the reason why I say that is I think there's some really funky things going on with internal struggle with the CCP and the trying to take President Xi and kind of decapitate him, from power. Because there's a billionaire that's out there from China that has been very vocal, actually, on trying to have the Chinese people uprise against Xi. And there's been an alignment that I've been seeing with some established figures that we would call kind of neocons, but there's a new term that's kind of coming up. And that new term is China hawks. And it's the idea of making sure that China doesn't become a world power to be able to surpass the United States economically and militarily, and that the Five Eyes.
You just cut out. Are you with us still,
Shit.
Paul? Yeah, let's listen to
Yeah,
this.
I'm
Can
here.
you see the screen with Senator Tom Coffin right now? Cotton?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's listen to what he has to say.
yeah.
They also claimed for almost 2 months until earlier this week that it had originated.
I can see it, but I can't hear
In a
it.
seafood market in Wuhan. That locals had contracted.
Yeah, it's not playing really well. But basically what he says in this expose is that Out of the 40 initial cases, 14 of them were not from that wet market. That what happened in the wet market is that the Wuhan coronavirus walked in and walked back out, and that case 0 is still unexplained.
Right, right. Well, I think this is falling in line with, what I was trying to, the point that I was making, that it, even though it was engineered and it leaked out of the P4 facility, it may have been forcefully leaked, and that there is a group of people that I think is working with the United States that it's potentially trying to use this to overthrow Xi. Now it is kind of conspiratorial. What I'm saying is very conspiratorial.
It says that the Wuhan BSL-4 lab, the one you're talking about, is also specially designated as the World Health Organization Research Lab, according to Dr. Boyle.
Right. Right. We know for a fact, and there's been a lot of evidence of this in mainstream media of WTO kowtowing to President Xi. And it explains why we didn't hear the WTO be forceful with, you've never heard anything from the WTO actually questioning the protocols of safety at the P4 facility. And there's a reason for that. That is a data point. That there is a.
They care about the masks.
It's almost like
they don't care about the protocol,
right?
at the P4 lab.
Right. So I don't believe that it was leaked out by President Xi's regime. I believe that there are, if you want to call them white hats, trying to pull down the CCP, and they took this opportunity of an engineered virus to leak out of the P4 facility. And I am not so sure that the espionage charge.
As soon as you said espionage, you froze up.
Fucking A, man. They're watching us. I'm telling you. Okay. So from the espionage from the Harvard professor, it wouldn't surprise me that it is kind of a double agent thing going on. That the Chinese thought they had someone that they could count on from the United States that they could buy off. And but in reality, he's actually working for the U.S., and that the white hats actually leaked it out. Now, what scares me about this, and this is the point, this is part of the theory that I don't really fully understand, is that when you leak out a bioweapon like that, you sure as hell better have an antidote. So, yeah,
I hope so.
Do we have it or not? Because, I'm not so sure that this Chinese individual that I'm referencing that's trying to overthrow the CCP, that it seems that the China hawks in the United States are working with. If this is true, I'm not sure if he's like a cult member and he's just hell bent on just taking down the communist China and knowing that there'll be carnage, or is there some more global coordination for global rule? I haven't worked all those pieces out, but I'll tell you what, the virus was engineered. It was not zoonotic. We know this. This is a fact. And there is suspicion that this virus was maliciously leaked out of the P4 facility. And it just so happens that there's a lot of social unrest in China. They have crop yield problems now.
How can
they
you
have
be so
livestock
certain,
issues.
Dr. Paul, that it's not zoonotic at this point? Because I'm still 50-50 on it.
Okay, well, one, we know that they were modifying the genomic code all the way back in 2010 to understand the latency in certain types of bat species. So they had that code back in 2010.
Agreed.
Now, obviously, it's moved forward and became more advanced. And these homologies that we were talking about with HIV, they go all the way back,
So based on
several
evidence,
years.
genetic homologies, we can assume that it's probably, we're looking at higher than 50% probability of manufacture because there's too many coincidental homologies in a single genome.
I think it's better than 2 sigma. So
That's a boom.
follow the research on what they were doing to understand what's going on naturally in the zoonotic world. They had to make and manufacture something in the laboratory. All right. And then you have these researchers from India that, did their sequencing, bioinformatics sequencing paper to prove it. And anyone like myself, was making comparisons and saw the comparisons between sequences in the NIH database and sequences with the Wuhan strands, and saw those very things that are in the paper, and they pulled the paper down. And so what I did with the few followers that I have on my channel, I created a video and I said, hey, Oppenheimer Ranch has the paper. I have the paper. There's a few others that have the paper. I'm putting it on my website. So I, put a link on there. And I had, I asked my followers to download that link, save that PDF on their hard drive, in a safe place, print it out, because it's a key. It's a piece that if we did not have that paper, it would have been very hard for us to realize that they actually inserted, for us to know the actual amino acid sequence that shows the HIV homology in the S protein. So because of this, the chances of all this happening zoonotically is crazy. I mean, it's like, that's crazy. So they had this thing, I believe, for research. The question is the geopolitical environment ripe to utilize this particular engineered virus as a means to pull down the CCP?
What I shared earlier today on my social media was the fact that, and you could probably see it, January 30th, 2020. Okay, this is a year ago. The UTMC Emergency Medicine Residence Global and Disaster Medicine site and other sites on the internet are talking about a pandemic supply chain network, the PSCN. Have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is basically.
Well, I'm familiar with the.
Yeah, it's basically a way to
networks,
implement instantaneous globalism during pandemic, and this would be the means to the end.
Mm-hmm. And another data point to prove this is what we've been hearing with some of these preppers. I've heard they've done, they've tried to procure supply chains for.
You're cut out again.
Damn. Wow. So there seems to be an orchestrated effort by the establishment to try to procure supply chains of companies that help supply food. And they have done simulation runs, like a FEMA simulation run, where they knock on people's doors for for what they would call hoarders to procure, the government procuring the hoarders' materials that they've procured over the years to prep. So there might be this battle between the citizenry and the government, you know. Yeah, you know, but the question is, will individuals just stand aside and let it happen, or will individuals be willing to fight it, you know?
Well, we talked
I
about
come
this
from
on
you know,
previous shows, and about a year ago, had many guests on, and we came up with a solution. It's called the multiple bug out plan, where you have one cache of your real bug out supplies, all your food and medicine in one bunker, and then you have your fake bunker right behind your house, where when the government people come in, you welcome them in, you make them coffee, you bring them to your bunker, and they take it all, and then when they leave, you shoot them in the ass as they go down your driveway, because you got 50 times more supplies behind that, and these idiots deserve it. What are your thoughts?
right. I like the idea of that. The problem is it's hard to do when you're in a high density area like New York or Boston or Chicago.
Impossible.
You know, I'll tell you, yeah, you know, I was born and raised in Michigan, and and it was more suburbia, you know, but it's easier to prep in suburbia than it is in a high density area like New York. And I do not feel safe, especially with what I'm starting to see that's, you know, over the horizon and you know, concerned. But I have a fighting spirit, and, you know, it's, you know, yes, you have to prepare, but there is also the idea of coordinating with like-minded individuals to be able to be that next Valley Forge, that next George Washington, that next
Paul Revere,
revolution. Well, I don't know if I'm Paul Revere, but, you know, I'm sure as hell a Hamilton. But, you know, I'll tell you, I will not, because of what happened to my.
So, Paul, you were just talking about what happened to your, I believe, brother?
Yeah.
They just cut off. So what happened?
Well, I mean, what was happening to my brother was early death because of heart disease. But, you know, that's kind of like my mission in a way, is like to help people,
look, that's
because
the pharmaceutical,
you know, my
push
brother
of statins on people that are actually making them sicker. And I have the same effect. When I started the March Against Monsanto, it's when I realized that my cousins, my closest cousins, Robbie and Stephanie, they were my mother's sister's kids. My uncle died. My Uncle Bob died because he was a frontline helicopter pilot in Vietnam, and he was being sprayed by Agent Orange. When he came back from the war, they tried open heart surgery. He was like 35, and his heart melted in their hands. They never saw organ damage like this, and they had no explanation. But 30 years later, I had the explanation, and I did it for them. I never told them why I was doing it, but Monsanto had killed my uncle. Monsanto had killed my mother, and I knew that these chemical corporations were killing people, and that's when the switch hit me.
Well, I mean, you know, for me, it was, you know, my brother Dan, you know, he died at age 36, and his brother is a twin, and his name's Joel. All right. So I'm the oldest in the family, and, you know, and then 2 years later, Dan and Joel are born. And then a few years later is my sister. And, you know, the brothers, you know, were always close because we were only 2 years apart, you know, so we did everything together. And, you know, losing Dan was a major thing for me. And that was during my PhD days. when I was working on my dissertation, and I decided that I was going to spend the rest of my life, after I made a little bit of money in the market, working in New York, where I was going to learn about medicine and, and totally retrain my mind. Going from engineering to finance to medicine is not easy. And, I may, not know something, that is known by an MD, but at least I know the scientific method, and being able to do, research and lit reviews and understand. But, I made this 3-year progression of going through pre-med and going through a master's program in biology to apply to medical school. And then all of a sudden, as I'm, doing the applications to medical school and all this, the coronavirus pops up, and I just was, just interested from a medical point of view, understanding
Right place, wrong time. But it's actually the right time, Paul, and they cut you off again.
But studying these, this stuff on this genomic stuff for this virus, and I started seeing patterns, because I have a lot of disciplines, because I'm an older guy, and I'm not a young guy, I feel young, but I mean, I'm not I'm not a young guy.
No.
But but the thing is that I have many different disciplines that I can apply.
Coming together in the same way as that we are multidisciplinary scientists. I have an extensive background in the earth sciences, geology, chemistry, physics, and then I got into biology and plant sciences and permaculture, and I also for all those 10 years I studied architecture and dry set masonry and landscape design. So we're coming from this multidisciplinary approach where we have all these backgrounds, when most scientists are compartmentalized and quelched and stuck into these holes. And so you and I have a complete advantage. This is not happening naturally, and it's part of the problem.
Right, exactly. But, and that was the main reason why I was, pursuing the whole medical, process, was to help people, because I saw in the medical field, my brother die in it because of misdiagnosis and not the right treatments at the right times. And unfortunately, he died young. And it was a major thing for my brother Joel and my sister and myself, and especially for my mother. I mean, he literally died in her arms, So having a parent see a child die is really rough. I mean, it's not the natural progression of things, and I wanted to dedicate my resources, the intellectual resources and the financial resources that I have, to pursue medicine. And so I take this as an opportunity in my brother's name to help people. And I think any decent human being would realize that, this is just the right thing to do, to help people. If you have a skill, or you can work with people that have skills and pull everything together and try to solve problems for people, that's what it's all about. Life is a precious thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize it until it's too late, when they're 80 years old and, they're on their deathbed and they go, I wish I did better, or I wish I did this, or I wish I helped people more, or whatever. Well, but, we're at a time where we can help.
My mother.
Yeah, go ahead.
My mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, which had anastomosed into her heart, and that was in her bloodstream. And she did not die from the cancer. She was getting chemotherapy, and she was barely making her way around. After she was diagnosed, within 3 months, she was laid up in the hospital, and she was killed by the hospital staff because they continued to increase her opiate injections as requested. And she had a stroke from a massive dose of opiates. not from cancer,
Mm-hmm.
not from chemotherapy. And this is a story that has been told time and time again, in hospital to hospital. And there is not a cure for cancer. The cure for cancer is, the definition, by the way, is that you live 5 to 7 years after your treatment. And most people die after that of cancer. So the medical
Right.
industry, in my opinion, is the biggest fraud out there. Why would you want to get into that? Because you're simply going to meet like this threshold of where you either comply or you're shunned. Have you thought of that?
Yeah, and that was the reason why I didn't want to be an internal medicine doctor. I wanted to move more towards cardiothoracic surgery. So, I wanted to do something with my hands and fix the problem and then get out and let the body heal. So I didn't want to be really an internist or anything like that. So I was more, focused on the surgical route. But, many hoops have to happen for that to come to fruition. You have to get into medical school and you have to pass the right step score, and then you have to get into the correct residency and go through all the, the residential, the resident hoops. Well, but I really wanted to, what I really wanted to do was, work with, cardiothoracic surgery. That was my end goal. And, we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. Who knows?
Yeah,
I mean, we could be all dead tomorrow.
No, probably not. It'll take 14 days to gestate.
But
So it might be like 15 days.
But the point, but before I was talking about my brother, I wanted to just to end end a thought that I had, that if we're corralled, because I have this fighting spirit, as you kind of maybe sense, I will not accept the government being dictatorial to its citizenry. And the key is for us to band together and try to fix the problem, to prevent for them to corral us. If you take away what they're trying to do to us, then they can't do it. But if they do it,
They cut you off again.
well, because what I'm saying is it's real.
Well,
we're being watched.
In real terms. And I read this today. Let's say that you
Okay.
you now have coronavirus. New York State says you have coronavirus, Paul Cottrell, and you are quarantined to your apartment for the next 21 days. And you're one of the people that says, I'm not going to comply with this. I'm going to go out and do whatever I want. I mean, how do we deal with that?
Well, I wouldn't be that type of individual. If I was really sick, I would stay in a quarantined environment.
I know that, but there are 5 or 10% that will.
But right. But the ones that aren't doing, that aren't quarantined with proof that they are sick, if they're not staying quarantined, then that they're going to spread the disease and make things worse. So it's really kind of egoism versus utilitarianism when you're talking about philosophy. So I would side on the idea, it's utilitarianism. You know you're sick, it's highly infectious and deadly, and it's not right for you to spread it to someone else, and you should be quarantined and treated. But there's another side to this. The government needs to be more transparent on what the protocols are and what the treatment regimes most likely would be, so people would understand and not be scared when it actually happens. By just being non-transparent, the way that the NIH is currently and the CDC, I think people will get scared. If they're just honest that, this disease can be very deadly, but we might be able to treat it with different types of antiviral medication. Seems to be working. And if we catch it early, you probably will have less scarring from the pneumonia. But if you don't catch it early, you might have organ failure. So it's important to catch it early, and it's important to be, quarantined and treated. But the government needs to be more transparent so that people don't freak out. And this can be, something that will just blow over and burn itself out, and society will move forward in a positive way. But what I'm concerned with is that the powers that be will use this as an opportunity to what I call the delineation point. And that delineation point is the pre-Wuhan and the post-Wuhan epoch. And that is similar to like pre-9/11 and post-9/11. There is this curtailment of civil liberties that keep
building up, and that's what you were unable to say.
And they right, you're right, and it just, and the idea is that they keep on taking our civil liberties and away, and we're getting less and less and less. And there's going to be a certain point, a certain critical point, where that George Washington, that Benjamin Franklin type, the Thomas Jefferson types, these will say, give me liberty or give me death. And you have to fight for your freedom. You can't. I would rather, and I think many people that are listening probably will think the same. I would rather live free and be unsafe by being free than being safe under tyranny. Okay, so I'm a fighter. I'm in the sense of, even though I'm a small guy, I'll fight, just like a honey badger.
I think that I think there are 20,000 subscribers that would agree with you, Paul. And the attack on China shows many signs of advanced planning. We've just covered that. First of all, the new coronavirus hitting China is definitely a bioweapon, according to Paul, myself, and others, and all of the evidence coming out in scientific papers. Researchers in India have identified HIV-1 insertions in the coronavirus in papers that could only have been put there intentionally. And CIA-linked doctors say the insertions were made so fruit bat viruses would be more contagious to humans. And this is insiders. Meanwhile, Chinese doctors have discovered the coronavirus is designed to attach to lung receptors, which is why it's called corona. It's the spikes on the circular virus spherule itself that's attaching there. And it is 5 times more common in Asian males. So these are the facts than European males. So these are the facts we have. Is it a bioengineered weapon? We have huge amounts of evidence to suggest it is. It's targeted at Asian males. Is this something that the globalists are using as a bio-war effect, and we're not allowed to know about it? It's anyone's guess, and we're unraveling it here. So what are your final words, Paul, as we close up?
Well, I mean, I think everyone has in their heart of hearts the feeling that the next 7 days, maybe 10 days from now, is there's going to be a quickening. And some of the conspiratorial thoughts or theories may come to fruition. We're going to know, I think.
You said we're going to know, I think.
Right. We're going to know. We're going to know, I think. We're going to know, I think, that this situation is this larger plan. That there's this. It's not this. this virus thing that's happening is also a metaphysical thing that's happening. There's a physical thing that's happening and almost like a metaphysical thing that's happening. And it's hard to put in words, but it's the battle of the soul. And people will realize what I'm saying that are awake, that as this thing, the quickening, this quickening or this realization that this is happening, that the powers that be are moving into place with an orchestrated plan of whatever it is, but we have some ideas or some pieces of it. It's not fully clear what exactly it is, but certain pieces are moving, and that we're on a battlefield, and it's the battle of the soul, the battle of our freedom, and saying, you know what, I'm not going to accept a top-down regime. I want freedom. And that's what this whole that's the heart of the Constitution. That's the heart of the American soul. And I it's bigger than coronavirus. Even though coronavirus is a pandemic, we're talking about social systems breaking down to a point where we are going to be a never-ending surveillance state and a never-ending, top-down nanny state, and the days of living free will be over, and I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want it to happen. Well, I don't know about that, but I just wanted to be I just wanted to go to medical school, but the point, but we are at that point in time where the founding fathers of this country, the United States, we're at that point in time where we have to pay homage to the ones that gave us the freedoms that we have today. And they're slowly eroding those freedoms. And we need to bone up and really say, hey, we are not going to let our children and our children's children and our children's children's children be under tyranny. And that's all I have to say.
You heard it here first. Paul Cottrell for president. Period. Thanks for joining us, Paul. We'll get back into this conversation.
Thank you.
As soon as the infection toll hits 30,000. Look at you. You just look at it.